So today we're going to do an 18 by 24 of a scene in Sonoma around this time of year because I decided I was driving through recently. This is photos from a couple of years ago when I was painting out there, actually one day with a group. But as I was driving through Valley of the Moon here, I noticed all the vineyards are changing colors, and the harvesting's over and the leaves are kind of dying off, and pretty soon they'll just be empty vines. But at this time, if you get sunlight on it, it is absolutely gorgeous. So enough of what I'm going to paint. Let's talk about how I'm going to paint it. Okay. So again, 18 by 24, it's toned. I had this toned well before I chose so I didn't tune this for this exact painting, but I always tone with kind of a neutral light value. This tends to be a cool, more of a gray, blue, green kind of a color. And the value of it is probably similar to this value in here in terms of darkness. If I photographed it in black and white, this and this would probably be pretty darn close. So this whole thing is really kind of not real outrageously strong value contrast, with the exception of what the sunlight is doing to the scene. The sunlight is causing these deep dark shadows, illuminating the lights. We also can see that the sunlight is coming from this area right here. All right, basically because all of these areas are in shadow and there's some long raking shadows. So that tells me it's late afternoon light. It's probably around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon type of light, which gives you really nice light to shadow relationship. So with that in mind, let's get to sketching in what we need to sketch in. So we're going to take a little, and I'll talk about my palette. Palettes, I have actually a warm white laid out because I just happened to grab it. I have a white, a Naples yellow, a cad yellow light, or cad yellow hue, because I can see some yellows. I'm going to need some nice strong yellows. Yellow ochre, which is kind of infiltrates a lot of this. Cad red light hue, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, sap green, burnt umber, and raw sienna. That's my palette. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber, a little turp, and a little ultramarine blue together. I don't know why, but that tends to be my go-to sketch color. So we're going to just kind of get the ball rolling here. This is about in here, and then over here, down, up, over, and out. Maybe a little too low, maybe about here, huh? And up. Okay. And we want to get some of the spatial breakup. I'm probably going to look for this angle right here because that tends to be a pretty prominent angle. That comes from almost the center of the page, right about here. And it angles, swoops down a little bit and angles left. And then we get this raking hill, which comes slightly above center, comes over here, comes up. And as I've mentioned many, many times, you guys, these are all approximate lines, because as I paint, I may decide I like us to change a certain shape a little bit more than it appears. Or either that, or I realize I was wrong in my sketch. God forbid I'm wrong, but what the hell, it's the way it works, huh? I just realized I said God and hell in the same sentence. That's not a good thing. So let's go down. We're looking at this kind of a hill here. We're not getting them all in, and this kind of, and then this hill comes over, and there's an area in here, and there's trees in between. There's some trees up in here, and trees there, and we're going to go for this hill. That is a very prominent part of it. Now, where does it start? It starts above the midpoint, so it starts somewhere up in here, and then it works its way down to below the midpoint at about this point. All right, and then we get the long raking area back and up, and there's a little tree in here which kind of breaks. It keeps the line from going off the page. So I always like offerings like that. Offerings meaning what the landscape shows me that I can use. Then we want the big horizontal the big horizontal, which is about at this point. And it looks to me like it goes here, goes almost straight across. So at least we'll start it that way. Comes over, and then it breaks here and here, almost at there and there. And I want to leave room for this nice green area down here and so forth. So we're going to I'm going to probably adjust a few things upward. But that's going to be enough for me to start with. And you know what? If I were doing even a very long studio painting, I probably wouldn't do much more drawing than this. I know this is exactly what I would be doing if I was doing a plein air piece. So I'm going to start with these larger brushes. One thing I've noticed in this painting is I don't need a lot of small brushes. So everything is going to be done pretty much with either a gesso brush, a number 8, a 10. Occasionally I might pick up a 4, but that's basically going to be it. So we're going to start with a big gesso brush. We're going to get the sky in there, which is almost white. I can see a hint of blue up in here. So I'll take just a hint of ultramarine, mix it in with the white. And I took a hint and it's still way too dark. We want this as close to white as we can get right about in here.
So Laurel has a question. When you're sketching elements out, do you draw with curves or straights?
Straights, almost always straights.
Okay.
That's a great question.
She said, have you heard that geometric lines make things more solid feeling? Your opinion?
Well, I'll tell you the reason I do it is I am not a good curved line drawer. So it's nothing more complex than that. I generally start with straights and then add curves as I need them. And that's, it's not a big hidden thing that, I'd like to give you a really very conceptual reason for that. But the simple fact of it is I don't draw well personally when I start with curves. I've done it in class. I teach it sometimes. I think it's a good way to try. But when I'm basically doing a painting, whether it's a plein air piece or whether it's a studio piece, I almost always start with kind of straights. See, now that's a very interesting question, because to me, that's an experienced question. That means somebody who's been doing this. And so they're just curious about how other artists think. And I'm just, one thing when you watch any artist work, you're getting their point of view. You're not getting an absolute right or wrong, because everything I say or do, I can find an artist who does exactly the opposite, who does it wonderfully. And the thing that's evolved with me over the years, because I've taught for so long, in fact, what is this now? 43 years, 46 years that I've taught at a college level. And one of the things that I've learned in doing that is I try and always give what I have found over the years to be the easiest way. Because I think when you're teaching, unless you're teaching real experienced individuals, it's best to learn what I think is the easiest way and then go on from there. So I have two options now. Either I can start with the shadows or I can start with the lights. I'm choosing the shadows. So I'm going to take that blue, again, white, and I want to temper that blue because the blue is not temperate. And when I use that term, what I mean is gray it somewhat. So it's not quite as pronounced. So I'm using a little alizarin into that, which takes it towards a violet. And then I threw a little raw sienna into that. And I think I might be pretty good right here. I think I might be a little bit on the blue side. But I think I'm pretty good value-wise. Yeah, I am. And value to me is like, that's the key. I know I say it way too often, but I don't think I can say it as much as is really necessary. And that is that value does the work and color gets the credit. That old line. I wish I was the person that invented that line, because I think it's one of the best teaching lines in painting, period. It's literally the way it is. So with this little brush, I give kind of the character of the edge of those trees. And then we'll go in, we'll kind of mask the shadow shapes in. Now you notice I've mixed a lot of white in that, and that's because I want it to stay in the background. I do not want that to come screaming out at us. So the two factors that would make it scream, number one, a very dark value, and number two, a very intense color. So that's why I kept the color somewhat subdued. Still kept it towards the blues, but it's still somewhat subdued. And the value, I've kept it lighter than I know I may want to end up. But remember, this is, at least I had a light up here on near white. This is not white. So when you're painting on this, even though you say, my word, that looks like it might be a little bit too light, it's not, because the trees themselves are going to be a little darker than that. I mean, a little lighter and brighter than that. And I don't want the contrast in that background to stand out too much. So we're going to get the rest of these little tree edges in. Just lift that brush up a little bit, lift it up. I talk to my brush sometimes when I paint, just, I think it's because I fool myself in thinking that it makes a difference.
You're directing your brush.
Yeah. I blame the brush, in other words. Oh, that's a t-shirt, man. I should do that. Send in your money and I will send you a t-shirt that says blame the brush. It's not my fault, blame the brush. Every artist should have that. Just like, sometimes I scrub, sometimes I just set the brush down. Like here, I just might set it down, okay? And that'll give me a different kind of stroke. Same up in here. There, I twisted it a little bit when I set it down, and I might lift it up now. So I try not to repeat that same stroke too much. It gets redundant. It gets boring. So, and later on, I may see that I have too many of the same, and I may go back and change it. So I'm going to deepen that color just a little bit. So a little bit more blue, a little bit more brown.
Bill Ray just said you used to blame him.
If you were living here, Bill, I don't have to blame you because it would be your fault. And you know that. Bill Ray, artist extraordinaire.
Yes.
Some of the most beautiful car paintings that are being done right now. And I'm saying that from someone who actually likes to paint cars themselves. So
look them up.
Yeah.
And you're invited to come to Ireland sometime to paint the 40 Shades of Green.
What's that?
Thank you, Jim. You're invited to come paint the 40 Shades of Green in Ireland. Isn't that the next workshop?
Scotland's the next workshop.
Okay, maybe we can combine that.
And our France workshop is full. So, which is kind of nice for a change. It's that it fills up this fast. It means that everybody that's taking it can probably get their tickets, because we know it's running. So these European workshops are fun because you paint things that you normally wouldn't paint at home. And that's what makes it kind of fun. Plus just being there and living within the culture and, you know, with other artists for 14 days. Hopefully no one gets on your nerves. I try not to, but I've been known to, so. And yesterday was Anna's birthday. Just wanted to throw that in. She's 24 years younger than me.
Oh, goodness.
I'm getting lost.
That would be really weird.
What's that?
That would be really weird.
Being 24 years younger?
Yes.
Yeah, that would make me a dirty old man. No comments, Bill.
Thanks for the birthday greetings.
So these are like markers, you know. These are basically like just putting in markers as to where things go. I may be wrong. Probably am. That's this. Okay. Oh, trees right in here. got a lot of little stuff going on in here. You know, it's another one of these paintings that's relatively busy. There's a lot that's going on. One of these days I'm going to choose something really simple and do it so I can make it look almost finished. You know, people have asked me about these Friday things, and generally I consider them half done at the point that I get them to when you guys see me. And that's pretty fast for half done for me. I generally don't paint quite that fast when I'm doing a really studio paint. When I'm painting plein air, I paint quite fast. Okay, shaping up. And a little bit of blips down in here, not as dark as some of the others. So let's kind of just put them in where I think they belong. So we have kind of the format, kind of the plan. Let's do a little bit, one more thing. I added a lot of brown to the color I was just using. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the bottom, maybe with a little bit of orange in it, huh? Of that vineyard, just so I kind of know where it is. And we'll kind of scrub it up a little bit. It's umber mixed in with the blue and a little bit of orange thrown in. Okay, I could just call this an abstract. I'm done now. But let's give it some charm. Let's hopefully make it look better than this. The goal is for it to look better than this. That's my goal. Or as I like to say, the finish should always be better than the beginning. I know you're all taking copious notes on that. I actually said that in class one time. And my God, it went 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I said in class one time, I turned around, writing on the blackboard, because a student asked me once, give us, it's like the last day of class, could you give us some words of wisdom? I've never considered myself a word of wisdom guy. So I'm thinking to myself, and sit down, I start writing, and I said, I wrote, the finish should always be better than the beginning. You know, being tongue in cheek about it. And I turn around and people are writing it down. And I realized at that point, it was my maybe third or fourth semester teaching. You got to be careful what you say as a teacher. Sometimes everything is taken very literal. And so I kind of curtailed my sarcasm at that point. But that's who I am, so I'm sorry about it. All right, so I'm trying to kind of mix up kind of this color in here. Way too dark. Put some more warm white with it, and a medium. My whites for the brands I'm using today tend to be really, really sticky. And when paint is that sticky, what I have found is I have to add more medium.
What brand are you using?
Oh, I have all kinds of brands out. This Naples yellow, for some reason, is a Gamblin. It just happened. Every now and then I'll get a color from a supplier that I use quite often, which is Gamblin I use quite often. And I happened with ultramarine one time. It was way too sticky. And it was way, stiff. And so when it's that stiff, the only thing that will loosen it up is medium. And medium for me, meaning I use a combination of, in this case, I've mixed up a different medium that I've used. You guys have seen me use a lot of safflower oil. Well, I ran out of it. And being the frugal individual I am, I was out and I was going to pick up some, and they only had one bottle left. It was really expensive. So I picked up some refined linseed oil. And what is this other stuff here? Liquid fine detail. And I mixed them together in a jar. And that's my medium. And it's kind of nice because the liquid helps it set up fast. Even though I don't generally use Like when, usually when I'm on location, I use strictly the solvent-free gel, which is great. I love the solvent-free gel. Okay, so I mixed a little green with it and a little of the ochre. So we're going to try it over here, a little bit of a different color, closer to the background color. And I see really, but you see wonderful color variations in there. Hopefully I have time to get them all working because it's really nice. A little lighter. A little light in here. That's a big dark mass. I got to pick up another brush here. I think I'll pick up another one of my gesso brushes. I have extras. This one's a crummier one, so I'll get more interesting edges out of it. Okay, enough. You can't sit there and worry about it for too long because time passes and light changes. Although even I'm working my photo, so obviously light's not going to change. But I work as if I'm on location, so that I have to make the same kind of marks. One of the nice things about when you do paint on location, this goes for all of you. When you paint on location, you learn a lot about mark making, which is what all paintings are made up of, but obviously marks, right? Hopefully that's not I'm not messing you up with that simple concept too much, because I think most everybody realizes. And you have to be economical with your marks when you're on location. You don't have time to sit and over fuss them. If you're painting a specific light source, because that light source, with the exception of an overcast day, that light source is going to change. So I'm standing back really quick. It's working. That's all I wanted to tell you. It's working. Now that I know it's working, I feel like I can go forward. So I added a little bit of raw sienna to it because I see it'll get a little warmer. The raw sienna will warm it up without going too yellow on me. Over in here. So we do little big strokes, little strokes. Again, mark making. Let's throw a little orange into that. Oh, didn't get it. A little cataract light. We want to get as much variation as we can. I like this. We're going to move it over because I got some hills I have to get in there too. So I'm going to go back, pick up some more Naples, bring it to that color. And because I'm using the Naples and it's very stiff, I've added more medium. Okay, so we're going to kind of go right. We're going to follow this down right about here. Up in here, it's a little whiter, interesting. A little whiter, a little cooler. So I'm going to have a little ultramarine, little burnt umber. That makes it kind of red. A little ultramarine and some white. But keep it the same value. There we go. And if a little of this background color comes through, it's not going to hurt because the color that I'm using right now is not that far off from that background. We want to get the busyness of these trees. You're not painting every tree. God knows you're not painting every tree. You just can't get them in there. And not only that, it looks very contrived when you if you take things and make them really more complex than they look. If anything, you want to simplify, edit, and use your discretion. That's a good word. Use your discretion for what you're painting. In other words, and that comes down to editing. So I'm standing back one more time. It's feeling okay. It's sitting back there, which is what I want. So what that's going to allow me to do is get more colorful as I come forward, which is really what I'm aiming towards. Trees. Every now and then I see a tree sticking up. When I do, I just do a little bit more of a vertical stroke. A little warmer. So I threw some more raw sienna. little lighter, a little bit more white, a little bit more. I'm just grabbing that warm white, gambling warm white. Nice color. That's just a lazy man's way of doing it. You do the same thing by just taking white and adding a touch of Naples to it. But I try new colors all the time. What was that?
Laurel just wanted to know if you heard of Utrecht brand.
Yeah, I love Utrecht. You know what I like about Utrecht? A lot of people, I used to think it was a really paint that, kind of, it's only a student grade paint until one time, years and years ago at the Academy, I got Bert Silverman, who's truthfully one of the, to me, is one of the greatest painters living right now. And I've told him that. He knows that. He knows I feel that way. Let's put it that way. But he came and he was demonstrating and he laid out Utrecht paints and I went, okay, there we go. If he can use them, I can use them. Yeah, I like, and I'll tell you, let me go a little further. The thing that I like about the Utrechts is the consistency. It's not too dry. It's just got a really nice consistency to it. Now, I know people that love stiffer paints. I'm not one of them, but I do know people that are really, they love paints that have a lot of stiffness. Excuse me. If you hear me cough every now and then, I like to say I'm getting over a cold, but it sure's been hanging on for a hell of a long time. Hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. And it's going to have a really good Christmas. Holidays are upon us. It sounds like a commercial, don't I? We're going to go in here. Up.
And Nancy was saying that Utrecht Ivory Black and Burnt Umber are very transparent.
Yeah.
More than other brands.
In fact, I think I have Utrecht Burnt Umber down on my palette. Dark, I mean, when it comes to transparent opaque, I don't worry too much about it. I don't like light colors that are transparent. Let's put it that way. I don't mind dark colors that are transparent at all. And the two colors you just mentioned are dark colors. So just because you've done it once, this is one of the things I try and get over. Just because you've gone over it one time doesn't mean everything's done and it's right. You may have to go over it 2 times, 3 times, 4, and when you're painting on location, you don't have that many times because of the time factor of painting on location. So plein air painting, example, you don't have time to give it 30 passes. You may have time to give it 2 or 3, maybe 4 passes, but so you have to make the passes count more, or the strokes count better, the character of your stroke be more what you want the finish to be like. And still, you want to still plan to be able to come over it again and again and again. So you're still painting with the concept of layering, meaning you're going to paint it over it, paint it. You're setting up for the stage that's going to follow it. Now that is more true in studio painting even than it is in plein air, simply because the number of times you come over it can be endless. So we've got it down. We're actually right now, play with my Apple Watch. Okay. We're about not quite 30 minutes into it. So I'm going to get some of these hills in, these golden hills. And for that, I'm using ochre and white all by itself. Let's see what that comes out. I think it's going to be okay. I think it might be a little on the yellow side, but let me test that right there. Well, a little bit more. I think I'm going to put some raw sienna into it. It's got a little bit of red in it. Let's try this. Well, I sure like I like the thickness of the paint. My God, that's gooey and cool. And we want to get another hill about here. It's pretty. And add a little more medium because it's a little bit sticky. Just a little bit more medium. There we go. Where else? Right here. The top of those hills are even going to get brighter. We see how stand back. A little dark. They're a little dark. So I'm going to add a little bit more white to the color that I'm using. I should have probably stood back earlier because I'll need to come back into those, but for right now, I'm going to leave it. Just adding a little more white to that color. And we got some bigger hills right in here. There's a nice shadow on that hill, right? Oh, that's right here, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Big hill right here comes up and dissipates into a form shadow. You step back. Okay. The color is better than the first color I was using. It's a little on the intense side. That's okay. I'm going to knock that down a little bit. Gets a little grayer. As it moves, as it undulates down this direction. So I'm just taking some more of that blue shadow color and mixing it right in here. Let me step back. I bumped the camera. Oh no. Hopefully I didn't mess things up. And so Anna's standing by, so if I mess up, she'll
It's okay.
tap me.
It's okay.
See how we're looking. Okay. Values are right. I'm not 100% on the color. The values are right. And remember, value is doing the work. And if any of you back there are saying, well, I kind of like that color, that's because color gets the credit. But it's the value that's making it work. If some of you are out there saying, I don't think it's working at all, then don't comment, please. Or if you're like me, sometimes you see somebody doing something, you're going, well, why are they doing that? And that's, in case that's going on in anyone's head, speak up. Hopefully, because then I can hopefully answer and give you a real reason. I try and give you reasons as I'm working on it, but I'm not always on top of everything that you guys might want to know. So if there's something you guys are interested in and want to know, I'm here for you. Okay, let's keep going with the light. It's working okay. A little bit more. There we go. Loosen it up a little bit. Now we're going to hit that hill. That comes over there. Comes over further. And it's around, goes around this tree. Comes down there. It tends to feel like all these hills tend to feel a little bit lighter on the top. And I think it's because of where the sun is coming from. So in other words, when I say lighter, I mean right about, if I can get it, if I can get the right consistency in the paint, it'll stick right about here on the crest. There we go. Down here. Is that working? Let me step back. Yeah, it's working. It's funny because when you're up close, you think you do it and you think, well, that's working pretty well. But a lot of times you get back and you go, geez, I thought it was working better than that, you know? And that's why you step back always. Just so you can kind of see if it's working the way you think it is when you're on top of it. I'm trying to put paint on top of the paint. And I mean that exactly the way it sounds. I'm trying to put the paint on top of the paint. Or as Sherry McGraw says, I'm trying to lay a piece of paint down.
Another fabulous living artist today.
What was that?
Is it another fabulous living artist?
Yep. I don't know if you guys heard what Anna said, but she said another fabulous artist.
Well, and David, Sherry, there's so many.
I've been fortunate to, I
Oh,
should say we've been fortunate to get to know a lot of these artists personally. And it's always nice when you meet an artist and they're wonderful. And both David and Sherry have proved to be that way. Okay, we're getting there. Want to have this whole thing set up in the next 25 minutes. It's funny because the first part always tends to go slow and the last part tends to go a little faster, provided you set it up properly. And that's the key, is the setup, the lay-in. That's truthfully, when I was teaching years and years ago down south at Art Center, that's how I came up with the whole concept of quick studies. Truth, it really is. It's the concept came because I saw people trying to go in and make a painting perfect when they didn't have a good foundation. They did not have a good basic lay-in. You don't get that lay-in in there. I don't care, I don't care the line you want to use, whether you use Paul Sousa's line about polishing a turd or putting lipstick on a pig. It doesn't really matter, but that's what you're doing. Is you're taking something that isn't great and you're making it I don't know, you're trying to make something out of it that is almost it's not going to work because the foundation wasn't there. Okay, so we're going to start to get some other colors in here now. Start with a little bit of some of these warm colors, but I think before I do that, I want to get a tree right here. A little blue and brown together, a little darker. Okay, that feels better. Now, I'm getting these handles, so much paint on them, it's getting all over me. So excuse me for a second while I just wipe down my brush. I am not a neat painter. I think I might have told you guys this before. I'm not a Laurie Kersey, another fabulous painter, who's the neatest painter that I know. I'm sure there are other neat, really painters, but Laurie makes me look like I literally belong in a pig pen. So I'm going for a more of an orange. So I've used Cat Red Light, and I'm mixing a little bit of ochre with it, and I'm going to try. I think I'm way too red, but I'm going to try it anyway. Yeah, I am. But I want the red up on top. So let me stand back. Well, that's the right color. And below this it's even more red. So I can actually right there. Okay, and that continues up here behind a tree, back here, right about here. Okay, so I'm starting to get the feeling of the color. I'm stepping back to look at it. Feels about right. Now, as we move over in this, it isn't as bright, correct? So I'm going to add the cad yellow hue, or cad yellow deep hue, and white, and try that. And it's right top there, and then down here, And over here. I'd rather put too much in and have to paint over it. And it comes down about in here. Just kind of tickles. Yeah, it's a little bit more red there. So kind of tickles the top. So we're just going to kind of hit it, let it hit. Really light touch. So right up there. And then here. Now this paint tends to be really sticky right now. So I'm adding a little bit more of my medium to it. And we're going to take and put that nice. It's probably a little brighter than I need to be. But let's get it in there anyway. There. There. Okay. Stepping back. Now we're going to get the overall, this area, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up about here. Okay. That's kind of where I want it. So a little more of that red, and I'm bringing a little bit of raw sienna into it, and it's going a little darker than I want it, so I'm bringing some white. But I'm going to add more medium because it feels pretty sticky, and I know I want it to lay on top. I'm going to add a little alizarin. Let's try this. Okay, go back to my Cad Yellow Deep Ochre, Cad Yellow Deep Ochre. Okay, that's working. Get the whole thing in kind of now. Add a lot more terp. And we're getting a little, this is where it intermixes. So we're getting a little umber mixed back right in there. A little bit of the brown kind of mixed back right in here. And right down here. I can even throw a little blue into that if I want. I could see it having just a little bit. It's too dark, but it's where I want it. So we're gonna go light again. I'm 20 minutes away from where I want everything laid in. Now, you guys might notice that I do shout out times. I think some of that comes from teaching. Some of it comes from working on location. Because I like to be at a certain point at a certain time. And if I'm falling behind, then what I like to do, and some of that comes from illustration. If I'm falling behind, then I pick it up, speed it up, and make more edits. Okay, I'm getting that undulation. Now I want to go more yellow, deep, and a little bit more white mixed into it. So I want to go lighter, maybe a little yellow and a little, that's quite a bit lighter. Oh, I got a goober. A little bit more red. Go up and down, go over, make sure you go different directions. Up, sometimes down, sometimes. Splotch it sometimes. It's working. Whew. Wasn't sure how to step back. More red, more yellow into the red. Let's try that. Oh, I like that color. Ochre. Cad yellow. Light, look at that. Oh, that's my favorite stroke in the whole damn painting right now. That nice big gooey. I gotta let out more paint. I want to do more of that. That chunk. Where's that color? Cad yellow deep. Right here. Time out while I squeeze paint. Okay. Nice color. Let's put some paint down, okay? Like that.
Some of my favorite
This is that thick and gooey stuff that I always like to play with. I always like it when I do this, and when I do studio paintings, I very seldom, I do it more when I work outside. What I found, truthfully, and I've told people this for years, the faster I work, the thicker I work. So I threw some cad orange or cad red light hue into it, and I'm going to come over it. So I intermix some other colors. There's a little bit of I'm standing back. That's a little more red than I need. I'm going to throw some ochre into that. Plain old ochre. We're just playing with color into color until we get what we want. If at some point it gets too crazy, I will take a knife and scrape it down. But I prefer not to. I prefer to keep the gutsy, thick paint on there. We'll get a little bit more right in there. A bit more there. And then as it works its way, that's working okay. All right, I'm going to go a little lighter now. Where am I? 15 minutes. Good. Go a little lighter, a little more red, right? So I'm being a little more accurate now. Thick and gooey, but accurate. Oh. More red back here. I'm standing back. It's feeling okay. I want to move on to some other areas though. So as much fun as I'm having here, it's time to get some other of the painting going. It's like some of the trees that I need to get in. All right. Now below that, well, there's rag number 2, because I'm using so much thick paint. So I'm going to get this nice green going, kind of the dark green and the light green. So sap green, bottom, bum, little ultramarine blue, because it's not, has a little bit of a dullness, a little bit of the some of this dirty color here I'm mixing into it. And we're going to go, whoa, bless you. We're going to go right there. Bless you again. Isn't this great? We're both fighting colds. Anna started it. I got it. Now she got it back from me. That's pretty good. Now that we're going to put that lime green in too, which is going to be down here, and a little bit of a lighter green, a little yellow, a little green, right. Boy, that yellow is real thick and pasty. But right here.
Robert Weaver said he's been enjoying the fall colors and did 4.
Yeah, I saw Robert. I saw a couple of those fall paintings you did. I thought were really nice.
That's great.
Where did I go? Is that right? That's right enough. Let's put it that way. It's basically what I want. It's a little off, but you know, I'm a little off. What the hell? So we're getting it. Now I'm going to set the brighter, lighter yellow up. You know, what I probably should do is just use another brush instead of keep cleaning. Because every time I clean the brush, I use up an entire rag. So I'm going to take a lot of yellow. I want that chartreuse kind of a color. And I think I've got it. Nope, too light. A little bit more green in it. There we go. Okay. And I use all my yellow too. Do I have yellow?
Search.
In my cup there. Yeah, that's the one. We're using thicker paint, so I'm actually using more paint, but I like it. I like some of you guys, if you've ever seen any of my posts, I'll post paintings every now and then, and they're generally little 5x7s. I call them thick and gooey. It's just something I like to do. And so this happens to be a bigger one that's thick and gooey, which is a little more challenging because you really use a lot of paint when you do this stuff. And so there we go. Right. Down here.
Channeling the Carolyn Meyer.
What's that?
Channeling Carolyn.
No, but I'd be using a knife if I was doing a Carolyn Meyer. I'm not using, I use more of a brush. Good, pretty good color harmony there. I don't like that. That's a little too, needs to be a little bit whiter and a little more yellow. So I'm just going to come over it one time. Maybe throw a little ochre into it. A little bit more yellow. Paint into paint into paint into paint. It's a nice way of thinking about this. Just using paint into paint on paint, pushing it into paint. Okay, that's kind of what I was after. It's probably a little more intense than I want, but I can always take a little orange and kind of mix. I have all kinds of mixtures here. And the more you paint back into it, the more intermixing you're going to get, probably the more interesting it's going to get in the long run. And I want to get into those trees, which is our next venture. Our next 10 minutes are going to be spent on the trees. And what I mean, all this stuff up in here. Okay, so we're going to start up. Let's start up in this area right there with kind of a drab yellow green, for lack of, close enough. And some oranges here. This orange tree right in here. The top of this gets kind of a white, kind of a whitish yellow orange. And what I'm doing is I'm taking my yellow orange that I already have mixed up and just mixing Naples into it. And maybe a little warm white because I'm not as white as I want. There we go. Still not there. It's a little more red than I want in it. And we'll work it down into the yellow greens and oranges and the yellow greens down in here. Here. Pretty light on the edges. Right here. Almost blends in with the sometimes you can make a difference by the type of stroke not by just varying the color, but by literally using a thicker paint and varying the stroke, particularly when the values and colors almost sync up. This comes all the way down to about this point, and it goes over, and it gets a lot of orange kind of color up in here. And then it gets a few darks. So I can go back to some of the darks I already have mixed, some of the brown, blue browns back in here, down, over. Lighten that up a little bit with what I have in the brush. And there's a tree right here. And edge of a tree right here. A little bit of okay, that's got a pretty good feel. I'd like it to be better. I don't have time. So kind of that neutral blue brown, but definitely darker than back here, because we want this to come forward. So we want to get some of these trees in. We got a tree there. We got a little bit of a in here. And then we got trees. I already started smacking. It looks like I got them in the right spot too, actually. But right about in here. Let's see. There. I want to see if I can clarify the shadow now a little bit more. Clarify that. These trees up in here.
Oh.
Stepping back. It's working. A little bit behind where I want to be. Maybe 5 minutes behind, but that's not too terrible. All right, let me see where we're at here. When I start to get some of the lights in on those trees, I'm pushing all those darks first, that you can probably can see. A little dark, it's basically using blue and brown. And I'm going to go really dark up here. So I bring it forward. So up. And what that does is that definitely makes this in front of this. And the brown, a little bit more brown in it brings it forward too, because it's warmer. Warms, advance, cools, recede. Okay. Stepping back to see if it's working. It's working. So we're going to start to put the lights in some of those trees now. Let's start right in here. So work our way, and that's a lot of ochre. Ochre, medium, a little Naples, a little white mixed in, and let's start right there. It's pretty good. Not quite what I want, but not too far off. A little bit cooler. So a little bit more blue or green mixed into that. There we go. Comes down, and then it goes up. Right. Oh, I see another tree in there I missed. That's okay. We'll get it in a second. Let me grab, where's that other brush? Here it is. That's good. Got a good edge on that too, by the way. We get the tree in front of it, a light. Go lighter still. A little more medium. Let's try that one more time with more medium. There we go. A little greener now on the next tree. But more green, same color. I just added green to that color I was using. It's a little going a little raw on me, so I'm mixing a little any sort of warm color. In this case, I just grabbed umber and mix it with the green. That tends to feel a little bit better. Standing back. Okay. I'm at that point right there. A little bit of a.
Laurel would like to know if you ever do quick study still life, and
If what?
if you ever do quick study still life, and what's your advice on that?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. I usually take people on location and do quick study still lifes. Is stay with a big brush. My one basic line would be stay with a big brush. That's the key. Do not, and if you notice, I've been using this brush the whole damn time. Give yourself a time frame. And I'll tell you, when I do this, I've done this several times now, but done 15 or so these European workshops. We take one of the days. Students like it. I mean, students, I shouldn't say they're not all students. Some people are super accomplished painters, but they tend to really like it. You got to do 6 in a day. At the end of the day, you start, and at the end of the day, you have to have 6 done, and then we look at them. And it's a super exercise. Now, generally they work 6 by 8, 5 by 7, that kind of size. So we're not talking about giant paintings, not 18 by 24s like this is. But it's amazing what the individuals come up with. It really is inspiring, truthfully. It's hard, but it's a teaching exercise. And the hardest part is so many people want to get great paintings. And when you're going to do 6 in a day, they're probably not going to be great. You know, let's be honest. They're going to, if you get 1 or 2 that are pretty darn good, then you're okay. But you sure learn a lot. And that's the whole idea, is to learn, not necessarily to produce a wonderful, wonderful gallery type painting. And that would be probably my other piece of advice, is don't give yourself a time frame. When, you know, if you want to set up 40 minutes, which is generally what I usually do when I do these super quick outdoor things. I've done them in 30, I've done them in 20. In 20, they're almost like cool little abstract paintings. But generally, keep in your head that you're not doing a finished painting. And that is hard for some people. I've had people it's coming out pretty good. And so they want to make sure it comes out really good. So they want to put more time, and pretty soon and I swear to God, 9 out of 10 times they overwork it and screw it up. So if it comes out good, pat yourself on the back, move on to another one. If it doesn't come out good, kind of go have a drink.
You have quick study examples in your quick study book.
Yeah.
I mean, still life examples.
Yes, I do. Still life, figure, and
Landscape.
a landscape in the quick studies book. And it just reminded me of that. I do. And there's a couple of, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of step-by-steps in that book that are quick study oriented. But, you know, sometimes don't go out with the intent of always doing a great painting. Go out with the intent of learning. And it's hard. I understand that. I think for people that have painted for several years, it's easier. But when you haven't done a lot of paintings, you want those paintings to look good, and which I completely understand, completely. But if you burden yourself with wanting it to look really, really good, and I mean that when I say burden yourself, because it's a burden. It means you have to make it look good. Damn it. If it doesn't look good, oh, I failed. You haven't. You've learned. And not only that, give it a day or two. Go back and look at it. You'd be surprised. I've done things, and I was talking to a group of illustrators recently. I've done things where I look at it, I thought, it's not that good. I look at it a day or two later and I go, hell, that's better than I thought it was. The opposite has happened, where I went, that's pretty damn good. I'm pretty proud of that. And I look at it a day or two later and I go, oh man, not as good as I thought it was. So when I do these for you guys, I do these quick, and when I say quick, 90-minute is a quick painting. I think some of you may not, but 90 minutes but I learn a lot. And like I said, sometimes they actually come out good. And sometimes they suck. Thus is the life of a painter. And if you don't like that, don't be a painter.
So this is an interesting question from Laurel. What's the concentration, color, value, composition for quick study within the time frame?
Well, composition is yes, composition always becomes an important factor, but I would say it's in a quick studies, it necessarily isn't the most important. And you can compose in two different ways. If you think about it, you can compose with light and shadow, which can create the bulk of your composition, or you can compose with overlapping and shapes, and which you would do, say, on an overcast type day. It would be more shape oriented. So as far as importance, you determine that when you start. In other words, have an intent. Say, I intend for this to be, like, I didn't necessarily intend for this to be thick and gooey until I really got into it. And once I got into it and I was having fun, I kind of changed a little bit of my concept. And I said, I'm going to make this thing kind of thick and gooey like I did. Still not there. Need to get that tray. And so a few back in here, that tray has a little bit of a greenish cast. I already have those colors kind of mixed up somewhere on my palette. So it's a matter of just finding it and plugging it in. And then little pieces of light back in here. And I'm 5 minutes over where I want to be. Wouldn't you know it? Hate it when that happens. So I'm having to take some shortcuts. Little bit. I got to get down to the bottom, and then I want to have time to go back into things. So we're gonna get down to the bottom right now. Got to clean my brush. Ugh. When I clean my brush, just so you guys know, I talk about it. I don't show you, but I do this. I dip it in a little turp like that. So it's dipped in a little turp. Put it in between my paper towel, and I squeeze really tight, and I pull as much of the pigment out as I possibly can, and then rub it a little bit so that if I just rub lightly, almost nothing comes off. Okay. So we're going to get that beautiful yellow green and then kind of a blue violet in there. So that yellow green, I'm going to take that beautiful yellow that I just laid out a little bit ago, a lot of white, and a touch of green, more yellow than green. And medium. And we're going to put it, I'm going to test it right now. Almost, I think I could. A touch more green. Yeah, let's try it. Yeah, let's just let it kind of skip across. A little bit more green, maybe a little ochre thrown into that too. And we'll kind of come back. Don't want it to be one flat green color. That's pretty good. A little bit more green into that yellow. Little color variation here and there, but that kind of does it. That green could probably be a little bit lighter. So I'm just mixing this in with and we're going to lighten it just a little bit. That feels better right there. And I'm in the color range. I don't want to get this green. Well, I'm debating. Yeah, I think I do. I don't want to put a road in there all of a sudden. I think I want it to go back to green. So it's got a sliver of light coming through like it actually does. And then it goes back to a darker green. So I just took, and we're gonna put it right there. Whoops, I had a little brown, too much brown in that green. Add a little blue to that. I hate for it to look like it's just a flat tone. So I always like to intermix a little bit of other color going in. And we're going to definitely want to get, what do we got? Oh, we got 20 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to get the bottom of that kind of a lot of warm. So brown, I threw some alizarin crimson into that brown because I want to get pretty dark and pretty warm. Oh, that's kind of nice. I'll throw a little red into that too. Up a little bit here and there. Not everywhere, just a little bit. Oh, I sure don't like that. Made that stroke too high. It's okay.
Bill Cook would like to know, when you're finished with this, do you just scrape your palette and chuck all the leftover paints, or reuse them for another sitting?
I use them for another sitting, unless I've got to get onto 2 more paintings this afternoon for a show. And so, but I've used, truthfully, I've used up most of the colors on this particular painting. I don't really have a lot left. Oh, I like this. See, I like this better than this. Yeah, I leave my paints out on my palette generally for a few days. Now let's break it up here, up into the vines a little bit wherever I see it. If I see it go up a little higher, I'm going to pull it up a little bit. There, just because we don't want it to look too regular. Now I'm going to take actually a small brush for once, a number 2, flat. And I'm going to take that same dark, that brown, a little alizarin, a little red, some medium, And we're going to start to pull some of the, and we're just going to kind of look at the variation. I can see a lot. I can see some in the back. So we don't just paint the front ones. Like right at about maybe this point, we'll do one. That's going to be in the front. And then we're going to fade them into the back. Okay. Same here. That's front. 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 Get the front ones in. One. On a similar spacing. I'm not even looking at my reference now. I'm just kind of eyeballing. Once I get a rhythm going, I'll just kind of put them down here. Okay. And then we want to get some of the background ones. And some of them line up where you don't even see them in the back. But at about this point, you start to see them go back this way. Perspective. This may seem like a minor thing, but it really is important. It's starting to feel okay. Get a little bit of vine pull here and there. Little bit of. Okay. So now we're going to add lights. We added the darks. Now I'm going to add the lights. I'm going to try and do this with a knife if I can. Small one. Relatively small one. Make sure it's clean enough so I can get a good edge on it. Okay, so for the lights, I want it my cad yellow deep, white. That may do it, just those two colors. Let's see. Let's try it once. Yeah, throw some medium into that. Let's try it now. Try it again.
Laura, I would like to know if you ever save your leftovers to make a mud gray neutral.
Yep. Not as much as I used to, but yes. I didn't like the way the knife was working. I don't like that stroke either, so I'm going to use a, where's my liner? I'm going to use a liner. Oh, here's a good liner. Let's try it. Some of these have more red in them, so I'm going to use more than one color. Like over in here, they tend to feel a little bit more red like that. It just depends upon how the light's hitting. Kind of like the piece of light. You know, they got a couple of these posts. They have them in vineyards quite often. And if you take and find the dark first, then it will take this post right here from right at this point. Bring it down there. And then take one right about in here. We'll do that one. And then one over here. So they're somewhat evenly spaced. Okay. And then those are lit really loud. So I can take my yellow, white, and come in and put it like right. I had to step back for a second. Right. And right. There. And then some of the front posts on these, they're not quite as bright. So I'm throwing more of the yellow into it. And we're going to add a little bit of light here and there on some of these, just where it's flickering. It's hitting a little stronger. There. There. You get different types of light hitting, because some of them are hitting on the back. Okay, that's starting to work. Is it working perfect? Absolutely not, but it's getting closer to what I want it to be. So we're going to take a little light from here. Okay. So little fence posts back. So a lot more white. I'm not going to put all the posts in. I definitely am not putting the telephone pole in, but I want to get this little fence posts. So I get little slivers. See, it brushes like that, but look at it. If I do that, you see so I can go. Sometimes little things like this give scale. That actually helped. I like it when stuff helps. Pick up some more of this cad yellow light here. Get a little gooey. See if, just so you see what I've got on the brush, right? It's too picky. You can see I was making a bunch of little strokes. Not good. That tree back there. Let me see if I need to hit any of these trees a little stronger here. Step back for a second. Okay. Take some of the lights, some of the shadows in the background and add some more. So I got to go back to that lighter blue, kind of like in that range. It's a little too dark, a little more white, a little more white. And remember I said just because you've gone over it once, doesn't mean it's done. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going over it a second time, some of those. Because when I painted the lights in, I kind of painted some of the shadows out. So you go back in, you add more. It's only done when you say it's done. That's a studio painting. The plein air painting, it's done when, you know, the light changes so much, or you have the essence of what you want down on canvas. It's one of those two. Studio painting is something that I say, let it set, look at it later, and then decide if it's done. Don't make that decision as you're working on it. Got to paint the light side of that tree. Too green. So I just push more of that other paint around. That's starting to work. I like all this stuff. I want to change a few things about it, but other than that, it's basically working pretty well. I'm looking for all these little touches that I can make the whole thing work just a little bit better. Make little improvements overall all over the place. And those little improvements hopefully amount up to an overall big improvement. But it's the little steps, little by little, and then leave it alone, and then move to another area and do your step there. So you don't just stay in one area. Now I see some worms back in there. Same value. Nope, too dark. Let's try it.
They're all saying it's weird how our perception changes about our work all the time.
Yep. Boy, you got that right. I know you think something's really good and you look at it later and you go, what was I thinking? Why the hell did I think that was good? And then I've done the opposite, where I've actually looked back at paintings that I didn't think were very good. I was just doing that just a few days ago. It was downstairs basically in the garage where I have a lot of old, and I pulled some out and I went, yeah, that's actually pretty good. So I don't know what the reason is for that. I think we see other types of potential. And I'll tell you what, I've done this with, sometimes it's really good to have another person around. Like I have Anna around, right? So very often, this has happened 2 or 3 times now, and where I've decided I wasn't going to send something to a gallery or take it in, and she's convinced me to take it in. And I'll be damned if it wasn't the first thing that sells. And it just goes to show you, where I didn't even think it was that good, someone else looked at it and went, oh, I'm going to buy that. So it means doesn't mean just because they bought it, it's good. It means it touched somebody. And so my perception of what, I have to kind of think of what I would buy, and as opposed to what I would, I don't know, what I would display. I want to display work that I feel good about. And generally, it's not that I wouldn't put it in because I feel bad about it. It's just, it just doesn't, something doesn't hit me about it at the time. But again, I might look at it a month later and go, whoa, that's really good. So you're absolutely right about perception changes. I think over the years it changes. You know, I learn a heck of a lot teaching because I see different students with different approaches, and many of which aren't like mine. And I learn more from that than I do from someone paints just like me. And it's interesting. Another thing that I found is in judging shows, I generally try and keep very open-minded when I judge, but I generally judge work that isn't like mine higher than work that's like mine. Um, that may not be fair, but it's just something I found. I found that years ago when I used to go to illustration shows. I'd go to an illustration show and a piece would strike me that wasn't any, I wouldn't do that. I think that maybe is why it struck me. You know, it's because, wow, I wouldn't do that. That's great. Rather than, you know, that's exactly how I think. So you slow down at the end and make these kind of little picky decisions. But then I keep stepping back to see if there's anything overall that I think really needs to be done. I mean, I see several little things that I don't think are working really well, but the overall effect I think is working fine. Up in here, I think I could kind of clean some of this stuff up a little bit. Bring that down a little more, and then get a little bit of overlap in there, meaning get some of those trees to overlap like that. Again, I'm picking with a little brush. I don't want to do too much of this. Because it'll start to look really picked at. And if there's one thing I don't like in work personally, that I don't like, and whether it's my work or anyone's work, I don't like to see things that are just, it hurts. When I look at it, it looks like, oh God, that just was killer. I mean, I appreciate the effort, but God, it looked like it was just torture to do that. So I like, you know, I've mentioned this many, many times, and I think I coined this while I was doing these Friday demos, and that is, I like paintings that looks like the work just almost fell off the brush naturally, where the artist didn't have to sit there and labor. Like Nikolai Fechin comes to mind, John Singer Sargent, Andrew Zorn, those guys come to mind when I think of work that just looks like it just kind of fell off their brush beautifully. And they didn't sit there and fuss. And if they did, they just went back and oversimplified it. But to get that effect and quality at the same time is a killer. That is hard. That's a lifelong pursuit. And I think pretty much that's what makes painting so addictive to people that have that in them, that just have that kind of lifelong, I want it to look great. I want it to look like this.
I think we're going over time.
Yeah, we're just about time, aren't we? Yeah, we are out of time.
Over time.
We're out of time. Okay, everybody. I got it basically kind of where I wanted it. I can see a lot of little things that I could fuss on for a long period of time. I probably won't. I may go back and do a little work. I doubt if I'll do a lot of work, just because I have a lot of other things to get done, as hopefully you do too. So once again, Scott came through for us. He's there. And when I know we put up an oldie over break because I was not feeling really great. I wasn't feeling terrible, but all I want to say is thanks, Scott. Thanks, Anna. Thank you all for kind of tuning in and watching.
Now that I got up close, it's really gooey.
Yeah, you see it
Great,
close?
yeah. Anyway, There you go.
That's some paint. That's not a vineyard scene. That's a bunch of paint.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Bye, guys. See you next week.